Welcome to the I Fired My Boss franchise podcast. My name's Dan Claps, founder and CEO of Franchise Playbook, a franchisor platform where we create, own, and operate dynamic franchise brands in the mobile services space. And my life's goal is to help people just like you fire their boss and become a business owner.
And I'm Christian Dadulak, top franchise consultant and co-founder of Real Franchising, a leading franchise consulting firm. And together, we're on a mission to help people fire their boss, hire themselves, and live the American dream through franchise ownership. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the I Fired My Boss franchise podcast. Super excited for the guest we have today. It is more of a, I don't want to say a solo episode because I have an amazing guest here, but no Dan Claps today. Dan is with his dad celebrating his dad's B-Day, but super excited about the guest we have and excited for the conversation. Before we do jump into that, I do just quickly want to thank our sponsor, which is Silicone Signs and Chase's team over there. They help make this podcast possible. Obviously, it's it's not free to do a podcast, and so we're super huge fans of them. They handle all the interior and exterior signage for companies like Crumble Cookies, Dirty Dough, Handles Ice Cream, and so many other tremendous concepts, Wing Zone even. They guide you through the entire process of as a franchisee of putting your signage together, and they help limit a lot of the headache that typically comes with that. So if you'd like some more information about Silicone Signs, whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee, go to siliconesigns.com and fill out their form. They'll schedule a call with you and see if they can help you out. So again, siliconesigns.com, super huge fans of them. With that being said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation here today with Giuseppe. Super excited to have you here today. And Giuseppe, your last name, is it pronounced Grammatico? Am I saying that right?
You got it, Christian. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yep, you got it. It's a long one, so hard to spell as well.
No, I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for making the time to come on the show. You have an amazing podcast in the franchise world that I've listened to, and I think you have a lot of both as being a franchisee, as a consultant, franchise consultant, that is. I think you have a lot of unique perspective, and super excited to have you on, man. Yeah,
same here. Consult to consultant. Been looking forward to that. And by the way, love the new show name. I Fired My Boss. I think that's awesome. I think that really. I think it really nails it. I think it really speaks to where people need some insight. So that's awesome. I really and I was like, I should have took that title. That was a great it was a great title. But yeah, no, that's compliments to you guys. That's awesome.
I appreciate that, man. Well, cool. Let's get into it. So I think one of the first questions that I typically ask people is, how did franchising find you? Like, how did you get into this crazy game?
Yeah, so I grew up in the family business. My family owned a restaurant for 40 years, and so got the business itch, right, to own a business. Just didn't want to be in restaurants. Restaurants had some rough hours, nights, weekends, and holidays. So went the corporate route, got my MBA. Really wasn't thrilled with the corporate world. Lots of different jobs and different bosses, and I just felt I had no control in my future, no control in my income, and said, you know what, I want to look at business ownership, but what else is out there? And via my search, I said, you know what, Subway was big at the time, and I wasn't really creative. I wanted something that kind of was already built for me, if that makes sense, kind of a business in a box. And ironically, reached out to someone who ended up being a franchise coach or consultant. And that was back in 2006, and in 2007, bought my first franchise. Really wanted to be my own boss, but didn't want to create anything from scratch. So that's why I started looking at franchising, and haven't turned back since. I loved the concept, and I loved it so much. I loved the way I worked together with my franchise consultant that I became a consultant years ago as well. So love it, and both of us get to help people make that very exciting decision to own their own business.
Amen. Yeah, it's super rewarding, and it's fun because there's so many concepts out there. And if you're like me, super ADD, and it keeps my my attention and my interest when I get to learn about all these new concepts that are constantly coming out. So it's super fun. With the franchise. So you said 06 or 07. uh, no need to name the brand if you don't want to, but I mean, what was that experience like, and what kind of business was it?
Yeah, the experience was good. So we looked at, the coach I was working with really had us look at kind of compare and contrast brick and mortar retail location. It was, I believe, the massage space. We didn't look at restaurants because I said that wasn't something I wanted to look at. And we looked at building maintenance and commercial cleaning. And the third concept is escaping me right now, but it'll come to me. And I said, you know what? If I had the choice, if returns weren't an issue and I can really choose what I wanted, which is where we focus a lot of our time, it's like, what do you want it to look like, not what it should look like. I said, realistically, I'd like to work from home and maybe have a small office. And I got into commercial cleaning and building maintenance because I wanted something that a manager can run the day to day, needed a small office where I was relying on contractors. I only had a small team at the time of 2.5 employees. Actually, I had a part-timer and 2 full-time, and then the people doing the work were contractors. So I got into that because I said, in a perfect world, Subway, and not to knock Subway or any other brands, but they require a lot more employees than I was really comfortable with. So once we knocked down what the business preferably, in my own words, looked like, and then we said, you know what, a lot of these brands that I was originally looking at didn't match. There's some other stuff out there. I think the other one was around expense reduction for small businesses. So we spent a lot of time there of what I really wanted to look like, and we got into that the building service and commercial cleaning, and it was I owned that for 13 years and sold in 2020.
Fantastic.
April of 2020. Yep. So.
Wow. So like right after the pandemic started to flare up, right?
Yeah, and believe it or not, the pandemic affected us both good and bad because we were doing, cleanups, COVID cleanups. We had a lot of small offices closed down, so it hurt us. It also helped the business, but I wanted something that was non-sexy. I wanted something that did well, no matter what was going on in the economy. And we had the MRSA outbreaks, the crash, going into 07, 08 crash, and we focus on medical, so we did a lot of surgery centers and dialysis and things like that, and that's where really it helped us out because those are businesses that always had demand that were not affected by the economy so much.
Yeah. No, I mean, so in terms of your criteria, so it sounds like you wanted something that was minimal employees, or at least to start, right?
Right.
Something that was more recession resistant. If you're like me, which I think you are, I don't say anything is recession proof because it's
correct. Yep.
Right. But recession resilient or resistant.
Right.
What were some of your other criteria when you were looking at it?
Yeah. So small team, recession resistant. What else do we talk about? The investment, the investment had to be within certain means. At the time it was under, I think it was under 150,000 if I'm not mistaken. And then, I would obviously get a loan for that. What other things did I have? Something that we said recession resistant. I'm trying to remember what other things we put in place. And it just had unlimited potential, right? It had multiple revenue streams. So we were in building service because we did cleaning, we did wood floor repair, we did painting and anything that we can contract out. So really it was a business where we were a one-stop shop for our customers where they can hire us and we would essentially take care of the entire building. So I like that idea that I can really buy one franchise, offer at the time, I think we had 15 revenue streams. Wow. And the way to expand was not to add a revenue stream. The way to expand, which we did in the same year, was to buy out of different territories to the point where I owned 2/3. I ran basically 2/3 of the state. So, and that's kind of where we were at. So I wanted something that we weren't just, one revenue stream, because back in my employment days, when we talk about diversification safety, I'm like, I had one revenue stream. That was my income. So I wanted to make sure if cleaning was slow, maybe we can make it up in painting. And if painting was slow, we did, wood restoration and repairs and things like that. So light bulb replacement. I mean, we literally handled it all. So I liked the business that was really diversified within the core business.
Yeah. I mean, that way you're not pigeonholed, right, into offering
right.
like one type of service. And that makes a ton of sense. I mean, at what point did you realize, as you're going through that process, you were looking at multiple brands, at what point did you realize I think this is the one that might be the right fit. Was it just strictly based on the criteria? Was it like a gut feeling? Was it the interactions you had with the leadership team? Was there just like your intuition said I should go this way, or was it just like cold analytical? This just checks all my boxes, and this seems like the one that might be the best fit. I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I was going through, I was a little bit more general, but as I was working with my coach and we started breaking down, and got a lot more specific, they were very basic. The business we got into was the only business that checked off all those boxes. And I'm not saying the other ones didn't; they were relatively close. But the big thing for me was meeting the founder of the business, leadership, and meeting them in person. I was lucky in that we were both in the same state of New Jersey, so we had that benefit where it was easy for me just to stop in. I didn't have to schedule something or there wasn't a flight involved. So, but I think that's something I recommend to everyone I work with. You want, even though it checks off all the boxes and makes sense, you want to meet other franchisees, but you want to meet leadership and preferably in person, shake hands, talk about, because the biggest thing for me was, okay, checks off all the boxes. This could definitely work. I looked at potentially, I did my own pro forma on calculations, but the other part of that is that this is a partner, right? This isn't, I'm paying this individual or this company a royalty every month, but essentially they're a partner. They're my support. So, how are they going to support me? And not only how are they going to support me, but where is this company going? What are the plans for the business? Are they looking to expand? Are they looking to add revenue streams? So that alone, having that conversation, sit down, and then, that gentleman opening up the book and saying, okay, well, this is, where we're going to be opening up some future offices. This is also kind of what our new website looks like. And this is kind of what our training manual looks like. For me, that was a huge help in solidifying my decision to move forward with the brand. So it's part of a lot of, I'm sure, what we both talk about with families looking to buy a franchise. But let's talk about support. Let's talk about the future of this business. And at the end of the day, it's that decision, right? That leap of faith saying, okay, I've done my homework. This is checking off the boxes. This is what's important to me. How am I going to make this work? And I'm going to follow the system. I'm going to stay laser focused and run with it. And that business was successful. We had it for over 13 years.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And it's so true, because I'm of the mind that when you're buying into a business, you're buying a system, right? And we're all about talking about how that's one of the big reasons you would invest into a franchise. It's
right.
a done for you business in a box. The system is there. But I also think that something that is underrated, like you mentioned, is the people, because it's the people that make the business, the people that are the driving force behind the business. What are their beliefs? What are their values? Like you said, where are they going? Where do they want to go? What is the direction of the company? And I think that's something that it's a conversation that a lot of people don't. I mean, I found with a lot of candidates, it's like, tell me the numbers. What's the investment? How much money can I make? Those are the questions, but and those are legitimate questions that need to be addressed. But I think at the end of the day, you also, more than anything, need to buy into the people. You need to look into the whites of their eyes and see, like, hey, do they share similar values as me? And I mean, frankly, also, like, do I like them? Do they like me? If I'm going to be working with them, I mean, I may not be working with the CEO on a day-to-day basis, but how do they treat their support staff? How does their support staff treat me when I meet them at a discovery or confirmation day? And I think people don't, they like to just cut straight to the numbers because it's more quantifiable, and it's, you can't quite quantify, human being, right? But I think that's so spot on and so important to really verify that and get a good feeling and get to a place where you feel pretty good about the team and what they stand for and where they're going.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. Yeah, exactly. To your point, numbers are, you want to quantify, you want to kind of measure it that way, but is this business going to give me, but there's a lot of businesses that can generate some good income, but are you going to be working 7 days a week? Is this semi-absentee? What's the support? Are they doing the marketing for you and answering the phones via the call center? How are they making this in a way that you're not going to buying a job? It's an investment. A team can be put together so that you're not involved in the day-to-day. Maybe a little bit more in the beginning than you are later on, but absolutely. These are things, and my whole thing is with the show as well is you don't know what you don't know. You don't sometimes know the questions to ask or even what exists in the franchise world.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say these are questions you should be asking. These are things you should be looking for. But before even looking at a franchise, let's figure out if you want, if a business truly is a good fit. Is it a franchise? Is the timing right? You need money to invest in a franchise. So let's explore that. Do you have money to put in? So I like to save people as much time as possible and put together a plan of attack instead of me saying, you don't have enough money, call me in 5 years.
Right.
It's like, okay, this is, let's talk to a funding company. The funding company says, all right, well, maybe you should have an extra 20,000 in liquidity as a buffer. Let's put together a plan of attack. Let's talk in 6 months, because in 6 months, if these numbers are hitting, where they need to be, then we have a stronger basis to move forward. So I think helping people put together a plan, and I'm sure you do the same, and figuring out what's the best kind of direction for them. I think it adds a ton of value, and maybe the timing isn't right today, but maybe the timing will be right at some point in the future.
Totally. Absolutely. With the process, so I guess it's funny because you're a consultant now and have been for quite some time, and you used a consultant to get into the business.
Right.
How did that happen? I mean, did the consultant contact you? Were you already kind of actively looking? And why did you feel the need to use a consultant?
It's going back a while. So I did a Google search. I remember in franchising, and I think I don't know if it was an ad or within a search, but I filled out my information, and I just liked what it said. It basically said, we can help you figure out if franchising is a good fit. There's no cost. Okay, that's a good thing. Right. That's associated to you in that, and we will help you figure out based off what you're looking for. I felt like it was more catered as opposed to an ad saying these are the 5 hot franchises. Buy now before they're sold out. It was just kind of like I felt it was more catered or personalized for the individual. So when I filled out that form, got an email right away to set up a quick 30-minute call, and that led to a couple calls and meetings, and that led to eventually 2 franchises. We ended up expanding, so the same franchise, we just bought 2 territories back in 2007. So yeah, I just like the approach. I felt like I had someone in my corner, like an advocate, basically saying, we're looking out for your best interest. These are red flags. These are things to look for. And this is ideally, just like I do with all of our candidates and families, ideally, this is what your business looks like. These are some questions to ask. And this is also the order to do things. Because right away, people are like, what's the franchise? I'm going to start talking to franchisees. Well, you'll have plenty of time for that. Learn about the brand first before contacting franchisees. So it just made a lot of sense. It wasn't pushy, and there were no brands even mentioned for the first couple calls. I think it was our 3rd call where brands were actually brought up. So I just like the attention to detail and the personalization of the entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what good consultants bring to the table. Okay, so you have the franchise. You've owned it for 13 years. I think one of the things that I talk about with candidates that I work with is I think it's important to start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
What are you building this for? Where are you going? Where do you want to go? Is this, are you looking to build a franchise empire? Are you just looking to replace income? Are you looking to potentially sell this someday? And even if you're not of that mind today, I think you should still build it as if you were going to sell it, because not only will you build a better business if you have that in mind up front, but I also think that's just it's smart, and things do change over time. And I think one of the best things about business is eventually you can sell it for a multiple of earnings, and in some cases multiple of revenue. Less common, but sometimes you can do that. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about business. I'm not going to ask you obviously numbers or anything like that, but like, what was the exit process like, and how did that go? And tell that story, I guess.
Yeah. So it's funny, when I signed my franchise agreement back in 2007, I remember I signed the agreement. cut the check, which, by the way, I'm human. I was nervous. So I flipped the name of the company and the amounts. I flipped them on the check. So I had to like rewrite the check. So I'm human. We make mistakes too. I was in my mid-20s at the time. So I was kind of, my first major purchase aside from a home. But so anyway, we finally got the check straightened out. I signed the agreement. I shook the CEO's hand, and he's like, any questions? And I said, yeah. And this is the God honest truth. I go, now that I own this franchise as of today, how do I sell it? What's my exit strategy? And he looked at me, he's like right away, red flag. Like, what the heck? Who did I sell this franchise to? And I go, no, that's something we didn't focus on, is what, end in mind. And, our agreement, I believe, was 20-year, and each franchise agreement varies 10-year, 15, 20. And not to say you can't sell sooner, but, and he said, well, what's your plan? And I said, my plan was to own it for, at first I said 5, and then I changed it to 10 years and eventually sell it for a multiple. And he said, right. And that's basically that the new owner, they would meet the new owner, approve them to make sure they understand the business model and that kind of thing. And so it was over 10 years. It was 13 years. And really what happened was we got a call from an individual just looking to purchase other businesses within our space and expand expand the footprint into New Jersey. And just talked, and we got a multiple of earnings. So, we did a show on exit strategies, and that's going to vary. It's going to vary based off of volume that you're doing, industry. Is it a franchise? Is it not? But also within the business itself with resales, some franchise companies are just say, hey, our typical resales go for 3.5 times EBITDA. And that's typically, I know, in building maintenance, it's 3x, but we're getting 3.5x, and just worked out a deal. It was right timing because I wanted to double down in franchise consulting. And I said, you know what, I want to spend 100% of my time towards this. It's something I really enjoy. And we cut a deal for, I forget the exact multiple, but it was a pretty fair multiple at the time. But yeah, you want to plan for the end, because you want to realize that, not being involved, having the systems and employees in place to be as profitable as possible while minimizing your involvement. Those are going to give you the higher, multiples in that specific business, and the various ways of selling it through a broker, through a neighboring franchisee. So it took a little negotiation, and attorneys got involved to put that all together. But we got a fair multiple, and and the rest is history. So it was definitely a learning experience, and I definitely stressed that in starting sooner than later, because if the plan's to sell in 5 years, don't wait 4.5 years down the road. Make sure that business is built to sell at some point.
Absolutely. Just a couple of questions about your experience as a franchisee, and then we'll go over to the consultant side of the house. What did your day-to-day look like initially when you first got started, and then as you scaled, obviously, where did your involvement get to at that point? Once you're in year 10 or whatever, right?
Yeah. So the first year I was very hands-on. So I left my job, right before I signed that agreement. I left my job in January and started the very next month. So I was very hands-on. The franchisor was newer. It was an emerging brand. So they were still, figuring out certain things and creating and redoing their training manual. So I was very hands-on, from being on job sites, doing demos. I wanted to learn everything personally, which is not something that you had to do. It's just a personal choice, since I was very hands-on. But the model itself did not require that. So very hands-on. So I did a little light cleaning. I did demos, especially that first couple months directly. Hey, let's demo equipment. This is what kind of a before and after at a facility. Went on sales calls, on customer service calls. Had a couple employees working for me the first, I believe it was a year and a half. So full-time, very hands-on. And then I got to the point where I said, you know what, I want to work, it's not affording me to be able to work on the business and expand. So we we purchased additional territory. So now we're covering 2/3 of the state. And I brought on a general manager to run the day-to-day, because I said, now that we're profitable, now that, I understand the business really well, I have someone that can run the day-to-day, make decisions on my behalf. And that was a complete game changer. And yes, I could have done that day one, but given the capital I had aside and given the type of owner I wanted to be, I truly wanted to be hands-on. So I went from every single day to, going in a couple days a week, doing, Zoom was still, actually, it wasn't even Zoom, it was Skype at the time, back in the 08, 09. So we were doing Skype from my home office to the actual office. So we were doing weekly team meetings, which was a non-negotiable. Every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. we did a weekly meeting. So, spoke with my manager every single day, did a weekly team meeting where it was mandatory everyone attend. Got to, spend more time with the family, worked less hours, and eventually just put systems in place so that as we knew when to expand, when to bring on new individuals. And if I started getting a little too involved, what were ways I can, is it another employee? Is it empowering one of my existing employees to take over a certain task? Is it automation? So every single thing that I didn't enjoy doing or was taking up a lot of my time, we looked for ways to take it off my plate. So we went from very full time, maybe working well over 40 hours a week to, maybe putting in 20 hours a week.
That's incredible. And that's ultimately what I think a lot of people want to hear, right? I'm very opposed to when people use terms like absentee, obviously, and because I want people to go in with eyes wide open, understanding like, look, it's a business, it's an investment. A business is like a baby. In the early years, you need to nurture it and be kind of on top of it, let it grow, and eventually that business is kind of going to grow up, and it almost your leadership team probably is like, no. If you're around too much, you're actually getting in the way.
Right.
So go away and let us do this. And I love that, because I think one big concern and a misconception that many people have when they think about franchising is I'm just buying a job. Right. And to be fair, there are many franchises out there that are like that. But I think it's super reassuring to hear your experience where you were able to start it out and get it up and running and then eventually pull back as you scaled. And I think that's super amazing and reassuring and incredible. So thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so you're a successful franchisee. How did the consulting thing get into place? I mean, how did that conversation start?
The conversation, it's funny, started immediately after I signed the agreement, because the franchise agreement, because I'm like, I think I would like to do this as well. And I remember the consultant at the time said, I'm sure you'd be a great consultant in helping others, but you're going to have a lot on your plate. So focus on, obviously, you went through the process and you enjoyed it, but focus on your franchise. And, I was a master franchise. So we coached people and we helped people. So there were a lot of similarities. So I used some of the things I learned, but he said, get that business launched. And before you get into, focus in on consulting, which is what I did. There was just way too much on my plate in growing the business, bringing on the right team. We moved, expanded our office and things like that. So, he said, focus on that. But I always, literally from the day I signed, I'm like, man, I would really enjoy doing this. And, how else can I help people? Because at the time it was really just phone calls and in-person meetings. So that's when I, decided to launch my show, Franchise Freedom. We wrote a book, and I'm like, some people are at different stages, that buyer's journey. We're finding out people are doing more recently up to 80% of the buyer's journeys before they even speak with us. So how do we educate people and gain trust through the process? So as we were talking prior to the show, that's a podcast like we both have. It may be a book or a webinar that you have pre-recorded that you put out there, but it's a lot of education saying, franchising is not the right fit for everyone. These are 3 reasons franchisees fail, or 3 reasons people shouldn't buy a franchise, but these are 3 reasons why you should buy a franchise for the right fit. Obviously, if you can't follow a process or don't want to follow systems, you may not want to buy a franchise. If you can't, I jokingly said, if you can't follow our pretty simple system of helping you find a franchise, maybe you shouldn't own a franchise, because that is what a franchise is. It's a process. It's a system. So yeah, I just think personal experience. If I read about it, I always said, yeah, that's interesting. But going through the actual process and being a client, or a candidate on the other side, I'm like, wow. I really enjoy doing this. And I jokingly say I probably saved dozens of marriages and throughout the process, because I make husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever's involved in the decision making process, be involved, because it affects everyone. So I really stress that. I did that. Had my wife on calls at the time. Not on every call, but a few. But I try to make it as seamless as possible and as stress free as possible.
I love that, and that's my philosophy too. I mean, it's a huge decision in many cases. I mean, you're investing your life savings. You're damn near close to it, so it's it's not something to take lightly at all. I guess one thing I'm curious about is, so like, how do you see the lay of the land today? It's July of 2023. Obviously there's lots of talk of recession, and arguably you could make the case that we're in one now, or maybe one is coming down the pike. Like how do you feel about the lay of the land in terms of the franchise industry, trends, franchise types of franchises or industries maybe that might be worth taking a look at? I mean, all of that. Like, how do you feel about all of that?
Yeah, so I worked on Wall Street when I exited. It was 07, and the writing was on the wall that something bad was going to happen. So we launched our business. So I lived it, right? We actually went through it, and the way we adjusted was, I own a business. I'm not going to put up the white flag and give up. I said, okay, what do we do to make this decision successful? And we doubled down on, as I mentioned, healthcare, surgery centers, and terminal cleans and things like that. So in reality is, if we're all waiting for the perfect time, you're not going to buy a franchise. So true. The market, the economies are cyclical. The market and the economy are two separate things. I'll repeat that from someone that worked in that industry for many years. But you can always find an excuse for not buying it. You can also, buying a franchise, you can also lose your job in the process. So I said, if you are the type of person that wants something different, you can own a business, a side hustle, a side income, whatever you want to call it, semi-absentee. You can keep your job and create a safety net, right? We all buy insurance for just about everything. Yes, there's unemployment, but how do we protect ourselves, our one income stream, which is our W-2 income? We can create that safety net, and that safety net could be, I bought a restoration franchise, something that may be a little bit more recession resilient or resistant out there, and that business can be run with a GM in place with maybe some involvement. Maybe it's during the day and nights and weekends initially, but I think if you are ready for that change, I don't think you're ever going to find the perfect time. The perfect time is now. Or else it's going to be one of those deals where 10, 15, 20 years go down the line. And I talk to a lot of these people, and they regret not making that decision. So yes, is it a good time or bad time? I always say it depends on where you are. I mean, if you're miserable at your job, you lived once, you're in your 40s, you're a corporate exec looking for a change. Why not? Why not take a chance on yourself? You'll have a lot more control in the business and in the future of that business. And we can always do the blame game. Well, a Democrat was in president, a president, Republican, we're in a recession. We're not in a recession. There's always opportunities, right? During COVID, there was huge real estate opportunities. There's opportunities there. Well, interest rates are high. Yeah, they're higher than normal, but you can refinance your loan. You can pay back the whole loan in the first year if you're successful. So people, I think, are always looking for excuses for not doing it. But if you truly want to take control, the timing is now. The timing is right to go through it. Maybe are we in a recession or not? There are plenty of businesses that are killing it right now, and there's other businesses that are affected. So how do you keep your costs low? Maybe it's a business with few employees, like a restoration. I go to restoration because it's the most recession resilient business that I know of.
Huge fan.
And
I know Dan is too.
Yeah. So, we know that business. So, very few employees. And so it's like, okay, small footprint, small number of employees. So really it's going out there and finding that business, which is, leaky pipes are going to happen no matter what. Natural disasters are going to happen no matter what. So I say bet on yourself. And if you truly want that safety net, or you want to keep the job, go for it. But make sure you work with a franchise company that is a good fit when it comes to semi-absentee ownership, because there are brands that don't allow it. So I say bet on yourself and make that informed decision, and don't look back, and just follow that system as close as possible. Work with your colleagues and fellow franchisees, and I truly believe you'll make it happen.
Amen. And I guess on that note, so obviously we talked about restoration being pretty recession resistant and generally just an awesome industry to get into. What are some other industries that you think are worth taking a look at in 2023?
Yeah, so I always go back to make sure you're finding the right fit, and I think that is always going to be big. There's definitely some industries maybe that do better than others, but home services has been huge. People are working from home. I have family that they're supposed to go into the office. They're going in like once or twice a month, so people are spending money on their homes. Coaching services, their businesses around helping other small businesses cut their expenses. Very, I think, a genius way of helping a small business cut back on expense. Excuse me. Was holding that for a while.
No worries.
And so I think that, and I think, anything in the wellness space, believe it or not, when people think of franchises, they think of fast food and the McDonald's and the Chick-fil-A's of the world. But believe it or not, there are wellness franchises when it comes to mental health. There are franchises around men's health, testosterone replacement, erectile dysfunction. There's a lot of other options out there. When people think of franchise, I had no idea that exists. So I think they're changing the game. They're getting out of the sterile environment of being in a doctor's office, making it a lot more comfortable and easily accessible. So I think anything in wellness and health, business services, coaching, cutting back expense, and anything in the home service space where you're not dealing with brick and mortar. You can run this thing from home with maybe a few vehicles, and then eventually upgrade to an office, or initially have a flex space of office and warehouse. I think that's the future of franchising for those looking there for a good match and kind of what's working. I think those are three areas that are doing well right now.
Yeah.
And will do well.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people think you need millions and millions of dollars to buy a franchise, and that's just totally not the case. And if you find the right opportunity, and just because you invest a ton of money to get it started doesn't automatically mean that just because you invested more money, you're going to make more money. I mean, it depends on the nature of the business.
You nailed it. No, there's zero correlation between the investment and the return. What does that mean? $200,000 or $250,000 brick and mortar location and $100,000 painting business. There's no correlation. It's what you make of it. If you hate the role of the franchise owner, it's going to be an uphill battle. So find the match, find where you think you'll be a good fit. People forget what's the owner's role. What you're going to be doing daily. If you're painting, two painting franchises, one you're painting and the other one you're actually we're going to Chamber of Commerce events and doing the sales. Two different roles. You're going to like one over the other. So really focus there, and then make sure when you get that FDD, you look at your item 7, your investment, because a lot of times you'll hear about the franchise fee being 10, 12, 15, 50,000, but you want to look at the all-in investment of what it will be, at least maybe the first 3 to 6 months with working capital. So do your homework. The info is there, but absolutely, there's plenty of funding options. You'll be shocked at some of the options you have. But I say go. When you work with a franchise consultant, make sure that on that first or second call you're talking with funding, because you'll be shocked at the options that you have available.
So true. There's so many interesting, creative ways to make it happen. So I guess also, so you did touch on briefly semi-absentee ownership. You were a semi-absentee owner, and I think a lot of people, they're like, okay, yeah, I like the idea of owning my own business, but I'd like to have a transition plan in place. And I'm sure as a consultant, that's something that it sounds like you talk about, obviously, because it's critical. How does someone successfully pull off semi-absentee ownership? And let's say that they want to do it from the start, right? I mean, how do they do that? And how do you coach your clients in terms of like, this is where you're at today, and how do you slowly transition over from I'm working my corporate job, I want to start semi-absentee, to getting to a place where if I want to leave my job, I can, or if I do want this to kind of stay as my side hustle, I can do that too. Like, how do you coach your clients on that front?
Yeah, so we always talk about what's the goal. We focus on the brands that allow semi-absentee from the very beginning, and then we talk about, okay, what does this look like? And I'll arm them in questions to say, okay, you want to make sure the franchisor is offering you things to make the business semi-absentee, such as, we're gonna do all the online marketing for you at our location. We're gonna do, and then we're gonna answer the phones for those leads via our in-house call center. So you want to make sure the franchisor offers those services and that there's a path. Okay, what does the ideal general manager look like if this is going to be semi-absentee? So they need to have a job description. Some franchisors will assist in helping you find that individual. I've even heard franchisors, and I'm not saying this is the case for all of them, in some cases have actually interviewed at some point the general manager. So you want to make sure it's how is this business semi-absentee? How is it to where I don't have to necessarily be involved full time? Well, if the marketing's done for me, I'm just overseeing it. So now I'm reviewing KPIs, not creating my LinkedIn post for the day or editing my podcast video. And then do I need this big office with a call center answering the phone? No, this is done. So all for me. So it's really figuring out do they allow semi-absentee ownership? And if they do, what are the services they provide? How will they help me find the GM? Who is the appropriate GM to the point where we say, okay, once the GM is in place, what's their roles? And then what is my role going forward? So once you have a clear plan, then it's like, great, I know exactly who I need to hire and I know exactly what my role will be.
I love it. Yeah, and that's ultimately the dream, right? I mean, semi-absentee ownership, but I think you have to be smart about it. You have to do it the right way. And before we wrap up, I guess another question too is, do you think that people need considerably, do they need to come to the table with considerable assets, more so than if they were going to be more owner operator in order to pull off semi-absentee successfully?
Yeah, I think if it's semi-absentee that involves a general manager, you may want to have a little bit more liquidity, because as you're putting together a pro forma, one of the line items will be obviously your employee expense. So
right,
if there's a general manager making $50K plus bonus and everything else, you're going to have to factor that in as a separate line item or as an additional amount in the employee expense. So absolutely, you'll need some more liquidity. And then you're going to have to factor in, okay, what is my break even and my expenses doing this full time versus a manager? And then what are the benefits of having the GM when they can dedicate 100% of their time plus a portion of my time on running the business? And so I would encourage everyone to run a few pro formas, kind of a pros and cons, or the benefits, I should say, of having the GM in place day one. But absolutely, I definitely, your investment is going to be greater due to the added cost of having that GM.
Absolutely. Well, Giuseppe, this has been incredible. I think this has been super valuable. I mean, even just for me, it's nice to kind of pick the brain of other consultants out there that are doing well and helping a lot of people get into business and franchising. And I know this was super helpful for our audience. So thank you for coming on. Any parting words of wisdom before we wrap up?
I appreciate it. And by the way, yeah, and I learned a lot as well. And a lot of it, we were talking before. I just, to anyone listening in, whether you're talking to Christian, myself, or whomever, really just, figure out, why you're not happy in your current situation. Business ownership is not for everyone. So I encourage everyone, and I like to empower everyone to say, you don't need to be rich. You don't need to come from a family of entrepreneurs. Really figure out what life looks like. Grab I have this white piece of paper, blank piece of paper. Start jotting down what it looks like. Are you working from home at a location? What's your role? Where are you living? Are you working from home? Just figure out ideally what your ideal situation looks like, what you don't like about your current situation. And then, that you have that gap, what do you need to get there? And I encourage everyone to speak with someone like Christian or myself, or anyone that you really click with and are going to be working very closely with to figure out what is that next step. Is it a franchise? Don't look at brands. Truly figure out if the business is a good fit. So I think you owe it to yourself to really just take the time, take a weekend distraction free to figure that out, take advantage of working with the coach and their experiences and the people they bring to their table. And, the grass isn't always greener owning a business, but man, I don't regret any minute of it. Did I make more money than in my W-2 job? Absolutely. But more important than anything else, if there's one thing I'm most proud of, is that I became a soccer coach and never missed a soccer game. Literally have never missed a soccer game since my son's going to be 16. He's been playing since he's about 4. So, those are the things that were most important to me, my why, right? And then, the money and everything else is great, but I get to work from home. I get to coach. I get to go to the games. And I think that's, for me, that was my big why. So bet on yourself. Your why is going to get you through the ups and downs, right? The cyclical parts of the economy, the markets and business. And you live once. If you could be miserable and unhappy at a job that you can eventually lose, why not bet on yourself and start your own business and truly bet on yourself and hire yourself?
Amen, man. I love that. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. I know your podcast is Franchise Freedom, correct?
Correct. Franchise Freedom. We wrote, if you're okay, it's right on the website. So the website is ggthefranchiseguide.com. And you can download the book for free. It's my exact blueprint of how I help people, through the entire process. And we go into more details of hiring a team of consultants and advisors and financial advisors and things like that. But yeah, check it out. You got some great shows. Obviously, your show as well. Fired My Boss. I mean, that's I think that's an awesome title. And if you ever want to trade it, I was really like that title. But yeah, get informed. Speak with someone who's actually done it before, and don't look back, and just give it 100%.
I love it, man. Cool. Well, this was awesome. I know this is super helpful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into another episode of the I Fired My Boss franchise podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors over at Silicone Signs for helping make this podcast possible. If you need help as a franchisee or a franchisor for your system with interior or exterior signage, they're your people. Super amazing team. So go check them out at siliconesigns.com. Again, siliconesigns.com. And we will see you all on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
You're f***ing fired. If you want to say those words to your boss, make sure you head on over to ifiredmybosspodcast.com and fill out the form to schedule a no-cost consultation. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might also want to fire their boss.